Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video. So in this one, I want to talk about the new jet in Battlefield 2042, the Draugr. There's a lot of new stuff to go over here. Every single weapon or gadget for this particular vehicle is totally new to Battlefield 2042, and as such, a lot of people don't really know how does it work, what are the best loadouts, how do the countermeasures work, is it like flares, is it like ECM, and you know, if you haven't played some of the past Battlefield games like BF4, you may not even know what ECM is. So I've unlocked everything for this jet, I've messed around with all of the loadouts, and I just wanted to share my findings on this, what I find to be most effective, and just what I think of the vehicle overall. Is it worth taking over one of the fighter jets? Let's get into it. Before we do though, if you guys do enjoy the content here on the channel, don't forget to hit up that subscribe button for more Battlefield content. Leave a like down below as well if you enjoyed the video, and you guys can always find me over on my Discord or indeed over on Twitter if you want to have a chat to me out of hours. By the way, if you think that you're subscribed but you're not sure, maybe go and check down below, as around 60 or 70% of you guys who watch my videos are not subscribed, so you may just be seeing these in your recommended section, and that really would make a massive difference to the channel. So as always guys, thank you so much for the support. So the Draugr has been touted as a glass cannon of sorts, insanely powerful under the right circumstances, but still very difficult to defend in. You don't really have much defense against heat-seeking missiles, especially if it's launched by an infantry player. But it really does have some incredibly powerful weapons if you power on through and you put in the time and the effort to actually unlock them, which is easier said than done because, you know, I would say I'm a fairly decent Battlefield pilot, but even I had difficulty getting the 540 kills, I believe it is, to unlock every single thing for this vehicle's loadout. So I can only imagine how much difficulty the average player is going to have to go through to get all of this stuff. Alright guys, so welcome to my collection screen here. We're going to quickly run over all of the different weapons, the defensive countermeasures, etc. that you can unlock for this thing, and then I'll give you guys my take on what's actually worth using and what isn't. So this is the first one that you're going to unlock here, or you're going to have when you unlock the jet, the 20mm dual cannons, the high explosive ones. These, in my opinion, of the three primary weapons here, these are by far the best ones. They do insane splash damage to infantry, and that coupled with the zoom in thermal camera is just such a powerful combination. They have an insane overheat time, so you can just spam them for a really long time without them overheating. They're just good for everything. They do great damage against air vehicles. They do, you know, around 30, maybe even 35 damage in one single strafing pass to a tank. They're just really good all-round cannons. Then we have the 20mm dual cannons, the AP cannons. These are much better against vehicles. I can't really say I found much difference with them against air vehicles, but they certainly did do more damage to armored vehicles on the ground like tanks and such. You can maybe do 50 damage in one pass with these. And then you've got the anti-vehicle rocket pods, and these are a little bit different than the attack helicopter rocket pods, despite the fact it says they are 127mm rockets, which is the same as the attack heli ones. These actually fire 2 at a time, and I believe you get 12 of them, and they really don't do much more damage than the attack helicopter rockets. I don't really see the point of taking these when you can have the HE cannons and you could do damage to everything. The anti-vehicle rockets also seem to be dusting on enemy jets. I don't know why, but whenever I hit an air vehicle with them, they dust at the moment. So I can't really recommend these in their current iteration. Hopefully the guys are going to buff them a little bit, but right now I would say these are not really worth taking, at least not in my eyes. Moving on to the secondary weapons here, we have the EMP bomb. Now the EMP bomb does what it says on the tin, it EMPs vehicles. Now it does have a little bit of explosive damage. If you actually read here, yeah, it says limited explosive damage, but far-reaching electronic interference. So if you get a direct hit on a vehicle, you can do, I think, around 20 to 30% damage to a vehicle. But other than that, all it's going to do is EMP them. Then we have the air-to-ground missile. This is a complete and utter letdown for me. It only did 35 damage to a tank. You only get one of them. It does have a pretty quick reload time, but it just doesn't do anywhere near as much damage as some of the other bombs and stuff here, so I tried this one out as soon as I unlocked it, and then once I got the kerosene bomb, I went straight onto that. It's basically like every other AGM in the game for every other vehicle. It's really just not powerful enough to take on such a powerful vehicle. Now, the kerosene bomb has a ton of splash damage. It does lots of damage to infantry, doesn't really do anything to vehicles though, so this is purely an anti-infantry loadout. But again, if you want to take, for example, the HE cannons or the AP cannons even, you can still deal with some vehicles. but not as handily as my favorite loadout. And surprise, surprise, my favorite loadout is going to include the JDAM bomb. Now, you're going to see a lot of footage of this in the background later on in the video, but this JDAM bomb is insane. You can drop it from pretty much the flight ceiling, almost from the stratosphere, and it will automatically lock onto a nearby vehicle as long as you drop it close enough and home in on that vehicle. Now, I'm not aware if you're able to smoke this. I assume that you can APS it, but it will do 85 damage to a Wildcat, and it will do 65 damage to a tank. So what you can do is go up to the flight ceiling, drop this thing on a Wildcat, and then as it's falling down and it locks on, you can then nose down and also attack the Wildcat with the HE cannons, doing the other 15% of damage. So essentially you just one-strafe the Wildcat. Same thing can be done to the tanks as well. The reload time is very fast, and I would say this is arguably the best one. Now, it's not great for killing infantry. If you dumbfire this thing, it is very hard to actually drop bombs and be accurate with them. I'm still kind of learning how to do this properly. Obviously, the trajectory and your velocity is got to factor into that. You can get infantry kills with this, but they have to be super, super accurate. You really have to like hit the soldier on the head with the bomb to get a kill. Otherwise, you're only going to do 80% damage, 90% damage. You're not quite going to get that kill. So if you're looking for anti-infantry, I would probably recommend the kerosene bomb. Honestly, both of these are very, very good, and I don't see why you would ever take the AGM or the EMP bomb over one of these. Okay, with that said, let's talk about some of the equipment here, because this, once again, is pretty much all new to this jet, and a lot of people have been wondering how this works. So the first thing you've got is actually what I would call the best equipment for this slot. It's the ground radar sensor. So what this does is, you activate it with X, and it will ping every single ground vehicle on the map. As far as I'm aware, there is no range restriction. Wherever the enemy ground vehicles are, tanks, Wildcats, Rams, whatever they are, it will ping every single one of them on the battlefield so that you can then get in a nice little bombing strafe. Furthermore, the cooldown is very short, and it's almost the exact same cooldown as the JDAM. So what you can do is ping this thing to see where all the vehicles are, and then you can drop the JDAM, and these two things will be coming off of cooldown every single time together. Then we have the cyber warfare protection system, which basically just blocks you from getting hacked. That's really just like something that they put on every single vehicle. You guys know how that works. It's on lots of the vehicles. Not worth taking at all, in my opinion. And then, of course, we have the new cloaking system. So this cloaking system is interesting. It can be used both defensively when you're flying away from a strafe, or you can pop it before going into a strafe. But just know that as soon as you shoot or drop a bomb or do anything really, you're going to break the cloak. As far as I know, this does not break any lock-ons. I don't think it matters if you're being locked on, if the missile's already in flight, whatever it is, it's not going to do anything against missiles. It essentially just conceals you in the air. And for that reason, I don't really think it's actually that good. I know it's one of the cool, new, unique, iconic abilities of this particular vehicle, but unfortunately, I just think that the ground radar sensor is much more useful than the cloak. But by all means, try it out, have a play around with it, and see what you think yourselves. Then we've got the second equipment slot, and we have the repair system here. We all know how that works. And then we have the new DRFM jammer. So this works pretty much the same as ECM in Battlefield 4, but with a few tweaks. So I'm going to explain this for people who don't know how ECM works. Basically, this jammer, you have to use it before you get locked on. So unlike flares, where you wait until the enemy has fired a missile, then you flare and it will get rid of that missile. With the jammer, you have to use this once you hear that you're actually starting to be locked on. If somebody's already acquired a lock or they've already launched a missile, it's going to be too late, and that missile is going to hit you regardless. Furthermore, this will only work against vehicles. Think of it as under radar, but you can use it at any altitude. So it will only work against vehicles, doesn't work at all against infantry, and that is really why this vehicle is a glass cannon, because you don't really have any defense against AA missiles from a manpad, and furthermore, I think they do like 70% damage. Yeah, they are pretty brutal. 2 missiles in this thing, and you are toast. And just as a bit of further clarification on countermeasures for this thing, Eddie, the lead vehicles designer over on Twitter, this is what he had to say. On the new vehicle, jammer is the only countermeasure. See it as a manual below radar, only effective versus vehicle weapons. It needs to be popped before a missile is fired at you. No counters versus infantry, cloaking, and hope. Cloaking does not block anything except being spotted. So like I mentioned before, this vehicle, I think I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship for it. It does have an insane amount of killing potential. The kerosene bomb, that coupled with the HE cannons, just absolutely shreds infantry. You can easily take out 3 to 4 infantry players in a single strafe just with the HE cannons alone, and if they're clumped up together, my god, it's going to be even worse than that. The kerosene bomb is even better. It really, once you get used to like the trajectory, which is going to be a little bit of a game that you just kind of have to play yourselves and get used to it. It's difficult for me to explain. All I can tell you is that if you're getting down low and pulling up quickly out of a strafe and your velocity is quite high, you do need to drop the bomb quite a significant distance before the reticle hits your target. Otherwise, you are going to overshoot the target massively. So just have a bit of a play around with it. But once you get good with the bombs, the kerosenes are really, really nice. But my overall favorite is the HE cannons for infantry and then the JDAM bomb for vehicles. This just really makes dealing with vehicles on the ground an absolute breeze. I also have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with the agility of this thing. I thought it would be super, super slow and enemy fighter jets would be shooting you down in a dogfight with ease. But the reality of the situation is I've been able to hold my own against almost every pilot that I've come up against, regardless of whether they were in the Draugr or they were in a fighter jet. I guess it feels like the difference in agility between an attack jet and a stealth jet from Battlefield 4, but perhaps not even that extreme, actually. I'd say the gap is a little bit closer together. But as I previously mentioned, the real killer here is going to be the AA missiles, especially the ones from infantry players. And I think the sad truth here is that if any number of players on the enemy team decide to pick up AA launchers and target you down, there really is nothing that you can do about it. You are going to die. You can try to target them. Yes, you can maybe drop some bombs from super high in the flight ceiling where they can't lock onto you and you're just slightly out of range. But they are going to shut down that gameplay for you. And there are going to be certain servers where flying this thing isn't going to be possible. However, in a lot of games, I find that the Wildcat is really the biggest threat. But believe me, once you unlock the JDAM and you start dropping it from up high, the Wildcat, especially if he's standing still and he's camping in the deployment, is not going to be as much of a problem anymore. This kind of reminds me a lot of how this used to work in Battlefield 4, for those of you who were around in those days. Generally speaking, I would go and drop a JDAM bomb on the Wildcat from super, super high, which does 50 damage, and then I would either drop a second one, or I would dive down on top of him, hit him with the cannons, and hope that all of that damage hits the Wildcat at once. And you guys are going to see in the background, that's pretty much what I've been doing with the JDAM here, dropping it from up high, and then coming in with the cannons just before it hits, so that he gets the minimal amount of time to react, you know, use smoke, use repairs, etc., and recover from my attack. I do think this jet's going to be a bit of a learning curve for people as well. With the radar jammer, which is essentially like the ECM against vehicles, this is actually on the second gadget slot, so this is going to be on your G key if you're playing on keyboard instead of the X key, which is normally used for your countermeasures. So obviously stretching from WASD over to G, and you have to be really quick about this, because as soon as you hear that locking tone, if you don't hit G instantaneously, somebody gets a lock and they fire that missile, it's going to be far too late to recover. So you really need to get used to hitting G. It is hard. Your muscle memory, especially if you're a pilot that's flown for any amount of time in Battlefield 2042, is going to be seriously screwed up by this. Personally, I would prefer for them to swap these two slots around. I would prefer for the jammer to be on X, and then like the radar scan thingy and the cloak and all of that stuff to be on G instead. There's also what I think is a bit of a bug at the moment. If you take any amount of damage, like pretty much like 5%, 10% damage, your entire jet gets disabled. You lose all of your air mobility, and you can imagine that if you're in a dogfight with a fighter jet and he hits you with a few rounds, you pretty much just instantly lose your mobility, and then that's the end of the dogfight, right? You're just not going to win. I can only assume that's some sort of a bug. I really think that kind of a mobility loss should only happen when you get hit by a missile or you take a significant amount of damage. So hopefully that is something that they're going to fix in the future there. But yeah, overall, I would say I am pleasantly surprised by this vehicle. I really didn't have any expectations for this thing whatsoever, but it's really, really powerful. It is definitely hard to master, and like I said, if you're somebody out there and you want to unlock everything for this, what I recommend doing is just going in solo and playing against the AI, because if you do that, you won't ever, as far as I know, get locked on by the enemy soldiers. You'll only get locked on by the Wildcat, so you can deal with that by flying close to the ground, utilizing under radar, and then of course once you unlock the radar jammer, you can use that and everything becomes a whole lot easier. Because, you know, really when you don't have the radar jammer, you don't have the cloak, all you've got is the EMP bomb and the HE cannons. Going against other players is going to be so frustrating that you're most likely just going to give up. So those are my thoughts on Battlefield 2042's final vehicle. I am very happy to have my lovely JDAM bombs back. I'm happy to have finally another jet vehicle in the game. But let me know what you guys think about this. Comment and let me know what your favorite loadout is. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video today, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.